do whatever.
Welcome everyone to the National Outdoor Learning Initiative's Community of Practice. This is meeting number 49. We've been meeting since June 2020 as part of the National COVID-19 Outdoor Learning Initiative, which was a collaboration between Green Schoolyards America, the Lawrence Hall of Science, the San Mateo County Office of Education, and 10 Strands. Our meeting today will be hosted by our CEO and founder of Green Schoolyards America, Sharon Danks, along with Nancy Sternesty, Director of East Coast Programs, and myself, Lauren McKenna, a Program Manager with Green Schoolyards America. We love to hear from Sharon. She has a wealth of knowledge and many years experience in this field, and she will share with us how to celebrate International School Grounds Month and Living Schoolyards Month. So I'll let you take it away from there, Sharon.
Well, hello, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us here today. My name is Sharon Danks, and I'm the CEO of Green Schoolyards America, and I'm also a co-founder of an organization called the International School Grounds Alliance, and I'll be talking about both of those today as I tell you a little bit about International School Grounds Month and Living Schoolyard Month, which happen every year in the month of May. And I'll start by telling you a little bit about each organization and how the themes that we're working on as organizations play out in this month and how you can get involved as well. So Green Schoolyards America, when we're not working on helping during the pandemic, our more normal work is to look at how the public land of school grounds, the public school grounds, can be used to its fullest, both for children, for the environment, and for the health and wellness benefits that Green Schoolyards afford to the surrounding community. So our mission is to collaborate with school districts and public agencies to transform what's often asphalt-covered schoolyards into more like park-like green spaces that will improve children's well-being, learning, and play while contributing to the ecological health and climate resilience of cities. Here in California and in many cities around the US, we have too many landscapes that are paved. And in California, the numbers are that about 6 million K-12 students attend schools on 130,000 acres of land, much of which looks like this. And we really are trying to encourage a different type of investment in our school grounds so that they can realize the potential to be fabulous places for children and for their communities. And so as an organization, we have an overall vision for children, the environment, and this public land that we're working toward. And we would like to see that all children have daily access to nature right outside their door of their school so that they can have exciting and hands-on lessons, that they can have interesting play and social environments, be very healthy and be in a positive environment. We want the ecology of the place, of the school grounds, to act as green infrastructure that helps their cities to address some of the major environmental issues, including climate, and also fostering healthy watersheds and wildlife habitat and better air quality as well. And we think it's really important that this public land be also used by the communities, because green space in our cities is not equally distributed. And if we're able to make every school a green schoolyard, then far more communities will have equitable access to nature. So when we talk about green schoolyards, we also can call them living schoolyards. Actually a term, despite naming this organization Green Schoolyards America, I like living schoolyards, I think, more as a term. First off, because it's difficult to be against one, because then you're for a dead schoolyard. But the living schoolyards are places that are richly layered outdoor environments at K-12 schools that strengthen local ecosystems while providing place-based hands-on learning for resources for children and youth of all ages. And I think the key here is living systems and ecology. Often we see plastic and rubber and plastic grass that people talk about as green for a variety of reasons, color among them, but they're not ecosystem based. So what we're really talking about here is ecosystem based living plants that kids can interact with that surround them. These are places that have as a central design goal children's happiness. We're trying to set out to help kids and teachers and school communities have more laughter and joy. There are also places that are can be used as teaching resources across the curriculum, across the grade levels, not just one topic, not just science, but across the grade levels, to spark wonder and let kids have adventures, and to give teachers things they need to teach well from, to have those things that they want to teach from, where they can get to them every day and monitor growth of things over time and such. Green schoolyards, living schoolyards can be designed as green infrastructure, as I mentioned. It's key that they're designed for children, and that you put like a lot of the regulations for making green infrastructure is designed for adults. But when you design it for children and you make it so that the plants can be accessed and the ground surfaces are child appropriate, you do get benefits both for the city and for the children. And often a green schoolyard environment can have many more types of play and social opportunities in them than can a plain asphalt yard. And so it's about having variety and engaging kids through all of the years that they're at the school over time. It's also about health, and putting, making a schoolyard more interesting makes kids want to run and jump and play more, which drives physical activity, increases physical activity. By making these infrastructure choices, we make it possible, and then we further enable it at the school level by making play policies that allow kids to do things that allow their physical activity to increase. And green schoolyards also give us opportunities to let kids have social emotional experiences, places like a giant sandbox is something that best bang for your buck, to get children collaborating on their own to work toward bigger goals, setting up places for relaxation and giving them a chance to learn the social skills about autonomy and confidence and having healthy relationships. As I mentioned before, equity, like that not all green spaces in most of our cities, green spaces are not equitably distributed. And so this makes it more possible to have, for every child to have access to nature every day. And they are places where communities can come together in social spaces, to have festivals, to have celebrations, to meet each other, and to access that green space. And so overall, really, as an environmental city planner by training, I look at this too as a time to question how we use our public land and how we value public land and the users of that land. And so we hear, and it's rightly so, places like Yosemite National Park being celebrated. Of course, they should be celebrated. But the value of those places to people, it serves about 3.3 million visitors a year. And that changes, of course, with each, who goes year to year, but roughly that number. And in California alone, we have around 6 million kids a day on the public land devoted to schools. And the type of environment that kids have are, often has nature and pictures, if they're lucky, on a wall, like this mural here. So schools, the California schools have 200 times the user rate, the visitor rate to our school grounds than Yosemite does in a year. And so I think we should channel our investments as a society more toward where people are also, or increase them, not decrease them from where they are in parks, but to increase them where kids are too, because they matter. And so International School Grounds Month, that I'll be talking about in a minute, is really about how we use this land better. How do we make the most of what we have? How do we see school ground land as important and to be valued and to be more useful than it is? It shouldn't be a forgotten edges. It's centrally important as community space. So the International School Grounds Alliance is an organization founded in 2010, 2011, that created an event called International School Grounds Month to celebrate school grounds. The International School Grounds Alliance, or ISGA, is an organization that is a global network of organizations who care about school grounds around the world, and of professionals working to enrich children's learning and play by improving the way school grounds are designed and used. I'm one of the 3 co-founders of this organization, and we now have what we call a leadership council, kind of a board of 70 people and organizations in all different countries around the world, 28 countries currently. who are all working to help children access the open space at their school and to improve the way that school grounds are designed, used, and managed. We work together to create collective impact projects of different types. School Grounds Month is one of them, but we also have on our website at internationalschoolgrounds.org, you'll see that there is a declaration on the benefits of risk, for example. In every country, all the parents say, don't go so high, it's scary, have the same concerns about helicoptering our children, right? And the same, both the concerns about protecting them and the concerns about being overprotective. And there's a word for that helicopter parenting term in every country. In Sweden, for example, they call it curling parents after the sport that they are so fond of. And curling parents smooth the way for the puck, for their child to follow, the same way as helicopter parents hover. So in response to that, this organization made a declaration on the benefits of risk using research. There's about 30 studies cited on the back of this, translated it into 15 languages to collectively take a stand on the value of encouraging children to learn through trying things and how that allows children's growth. So if that interests you, there's things like this on the website as well. The International School Grounds Alliance hosts events. We have conferences usually every other year in all different countries. I believe the next one is 2023 in Brazil. Not quite entirely sure, I think so. We're still deciding. We have schoolyard tours on those conference visits as well, and they're amazing to see what other countries do with their grounds. And then that brings me to International School Grounds Month. The International School Grounds Month was founded in May 2013, and it built off of an earlier School Grounds Week event that was celebrated just in England. And the idea was, we picked May because it's the month of the year that most countries have school open at least part of the time, so we could be inclusive about trying to encourage everyone to be outside, trying something on their grounds at the same time of year. And it's a global event to raise awareness about the grounds as a useful place to engage with and to expand, an opportunity to expand the ways that you use it now, whatever you do. So it is, the ISGA encourages schools to use their school grounds to the fullest in May, but it's also meant as a spark to get schools interested in doing it year round and to try things that are different and unusual for you. So, and in 2014, we worked with Assembly Member Phil Ting here in California, who got an Assembly Concurrent Resolution 128 passed in our state's legislature that takes this this idea that we had with the International School Grounds Month and turns it into a permanent month of May, celebrated as Living Schoolyard Month in California. So we have government support for this, and it asks all schools to design and construct student accessible green space for teaching standards-based curriculum, which is pretty huge because it didn't come with any money, but it does come with kind of a stamp of the government saying this is something that we care about and we would like schools to do. And so we can point back to that and encourage schools to follow that lead. So we know that sometimes it's hard to go outside if you haven't had, if you're not sure where to start. And so since 2013, we've been creating publications and then adding ideas to them over time. And so we have a series of books that are free on our website and Green Schoolyards America's website, and also on the International School Grounds Alliance website that explain International School Grounds Month. And these two books alone have, I think it's 235 ideas that were written by people from 27 countries, and we have 185 different organizations contributed them. And so the question, I'm the editor and publisher of the books, and the questions that we asked to our colleagues was, what are your favorite things to do outside with kids at schools in your country? And so what we got was an amazing range of ideas. And going back to these, I should say, they are companion books. They have the same chapter introductions, the same overall organization, but different content. And so, and I debated about putting them all into one book, but it was just so long that it split into two, and it's split by the country of residence of the authors. So the American book, Living Schoolyard Activity Guide, has entirely authors from the US, and the international one has US plus all over the world. But both books are meant to be used everywhere, and you'll see they have a different flavor in each one of what they encourage people to try. We also in 2019, well, every year we add more, and so they grow, and we're planning to do another edition, I hope, next year. But and at which point we'll solicit ideas and ask if you've got ideas that you'd like to contribute. We're always trying to fill in the places we haven't covered in terms of age ranges and topics. And in 2019, we ran a conference with one of my mentors, whose name is Susan Humphreys, and she was the principal of a school in England for I think 37 years or something like that, and just is kind of one of the mothers of the Green Schoolyard field. She is now retired and has, but it's on her shoulders that we stand, and the things that she has inspired others to do. We've captured a bit of her ideas in that were done as conference workshops when she was in town with us in 2019, but they are the most beautiful outdoor lessons, and we've there are directions to them in these books. The books also are in, portions of them have been translated by our colleagues in the International School Grounds Alliance. So there is one that has that was translated in 2015. So it has maybe about 25 pages of activities, and the Spanish version that was also translated in 2019 is about the same. It's a portion of the material. There's a Czech version where our colleagues from the Czech Republic translated the entire book in 2018. So we have these three online as well. And this is the range of places where the authors come from. In the international book, the red dots show where those authors are, and the yellow dots are where the American author contributors came from. So you can see quite a big international community of people with all different ideas. So inside the books, we have the table of contents I mentioned is the same in the two larger books, with topics on art, topics subdivided by topic, including art and play and health, social emotional well-being, schoolyard agriculture and food, things that bring out place-based understanding, wildlife and habitat, watershed stewardship, energy and climate, what we're calling thoughtful use of materials that goes beyond recycling, and community engagement. And each one has these one-page introductions that talk about why we care about those topics. And the book itself has amazing, tons of pictures contributed from all of our colleagues, an index by topic, an index by age group, and an index by organization contributor. And then when you get into the activities, we've tried to make them very simple and easy to do. They are one page long in all of the books, except the ones by Sue Humphreys, who let our mentor say what she wanted to say in a longer space. But all the activities are just one page, meant to be really inexpensive, simple things that anyone can do in any location, whether or not you already have green space. And so here's an example of art activities called Nature's Watercolors that was written by one of our colleagues now, who's now at Green Schoolyards America. Her name is Aisha Ursulan. And this activity is about grinding up plants and then adding a little water and using that as paint with young children to make natural art materials. And so it's got the directions for there. You'll find other activities in the art chapters like these, Shades of Green, or Dr. Herb Broda contributed an activity about having children collect all the different shades of green in small bits around the schoolyard, and then show examples of that range of color. Sometimes when we're just looking at the landscape, it all looks the same, but when you examine it up close, it's really quite different. From the Czech Republic, an activity about making mobiles that hang in trees that are imaginative flying gardens. From Sweden, an activity called The Secret Picture, which I love, which one person, both people start out with the same activities, sit back to back, and one makes a picture, an arrangement of those leaves and twigs, and then has to use vocabulary, describe it in detail enough that the person who's not looking at it can replicate the picture. So this is a perfect activity if you're doing language studies and you want to encourage kids to try out their Spanish or their Chinese or whatever it is they're learning, because they need to do that description, and that can work with any age group, or for young children, just learning how to describe over, under, between, in front of, left, right, all the words that you want them to know about. And then we've got math examples spread through these collections, rather than in the topic piece. You'll find them all through. And that includes activities for high schoolers on complex math and using trig to measure trees with angles and tape measures and imagine how big that is, for example, in relation to a whale. That one is from California. There's one from Sweden called Robert's Little Finger, which is about, it teaches ratios. And you have a child select a twig and then say, okay, that twig this should be the size of the finger of a person. Can you make the rest of the person with twigs you find on the ground and lay it out in proportion to understand what the ratio is to yourself and to the twig, and having to keep things in scale. For really younger children, counting using objects that we often see plastic items in classrooms being used, but this activity from India is using seed pods and flower petals and other things outside that could also be counters. And then exercise in symmetry from Scotland, another example of just how you use natural materials to teach core math concepts. And then the science activities range from documenting biodiversity in the schoolyard from the US to another example from Idaho about high school lesson about understanding wildfire and what makes something more burn more, and it's a controlled experiment clearly on a done with safety in a part of the schoolyard that is not flammable. But they've got directions about how how important it is to teach that, and why we need to clear our brush. And then Green Schoolyards America contributed an activity in I think 2016 that we call How Cool is Your Schoolyard? And this is about temperature measurement and climate change and extreme heat, and how the urban heat islands, how the materials that we pick to put in our urban environments shifts temperatures of that environment and the city. And that one we'll have later this year a written, this is a one-page version, but we're gonna have a more in-depth activity that schools can use along those lines to measure their own schoolyard temperatures. On the nature play front, we've got lots of ideas, particularly for younger children, how to make an inexpensive bean teepee adventure course. In Japan, they do this wonderful activity called pine needle barbershop, where they take toilet paper rolls and pine needles and make them look like little people. And then the children are at recess there, were cutting the hair. When we visited, it was a preschool activity. It was super cute. And in Japan and in Indonesia, they also use the soil on the site, and children are making mud balls, but they're doing them in a way that, at least where I've seen it in Japan, this activity is from Indonesia, but in Japan, they try to make them as beautifully smooth as you would find a pool ball on a pool table. And you have kids polishing their balls and working on them for weeks. Interesting. So there's lots of fun you can have with what you might have on your site. And then what I love too is the contrast of international cultures and presenting something like a chicken to a schoolyard. And here in the US, we have many school gardens that have chickens, and that people like them because they have eggs and they help to remove bugs, and they're great to hug. My children in particular were in their middle school years they were lucky to go to the school that has the edible schoolyard in Berkeley, and there was a whole lot of chicken hugging, and so we can relate to that as something that helps social emotional well-being. But in our books, we have that activity, a type of activity like that, written by our colleague Sam Ollery from Washington, DC, who's spoken here before. And then Sam is a board member of the International School Grounds Alliance, as is our other colleague, Muhammad Arifuddin from Yogyakarta, Indonesia. And Arifuddin has an activity as the principal. He's the principal of a school in Indonesia that does green schoolyard activities and goes on adventures with his kids, but centrally important to them is nutrition and science education. So for them, chickens are what you eat in the schoolyard and not just the eggs. And they are a Muslim green school, and they also slaughter their own chickens on site with the kids in a halal manner to teach cultural practices and safe, practical home slaughtering techniques, which you need in the place that he lives. And then once they do that, you can see in the other picture, they have it perfectly cleaned, set out for the kids after they've killed it to study the anatomy of the bird and take time to study look at the anatomy lesson before they make lunch. And so Sam and our food and set agreed that this was a wonderful comparison and wanted their activities together in the same book. And so I think it's just incredible how different the approaches are and how cool it is to have chickens provide many things, as the international Indonesian example is named. And then I think this activity too by our colleague Kyle McDonald, who was the founder of the Outdoors Empowered Network and also worked with us at Green Schoolyards America and with the National COVID-19 Outdoor Learning Initiative. Kyle, his previous organization was helping kids from urban schools go camping in the wilderness, but he wrote us an activity to help schools imagine how they could have camping trips in their schoolyard and use that same public land and in the hours that it's not normally used for special occasions. And so this is a schoolyard camping trip planning guide in one of this activity as well. And so just touching briefly on the ideas from Sue Humphreys in the separate book that I mentioned at first. Sue is the woman in the light blue jacket off to the right in this photo, and she came to share her wisdom with us at a conference, and she loves hands-on learning, and she had completely taken an empty farm type former farm site that was a school in England when she started to turned it into this vast forested wonderland that for children. And she was sharing with us her techniques, and she said, can you get pigeons to come to the conference? I would like to release pigeons at the end of day one. And I had no idea where to get pigeons, but we found that there were in fact pigeon racing societies in the Bay Area. Who knew? So we got this wonderful man who's to the right of Sue, who raises racing pigeons, and he brought them so that we could release them to fly back to San Francisco. We are here this is at Golistan School in El Cerrito, another one of our collaborators on the National COVID-19 Outdoor Learning Initiative. But so we brought the pigeons for the end of day one and released them. But what was meaningful about this is that at her school, this activity was related to all different types of learning. So in doing this, she would have the kids at her school, which was a preschool through grade 5, I think, elementary school and preschool. They would be studying the flight patterns of birds and mapping the geography. Where would birds go from where we are now to where their homing pigeon home is? How would they get there? You'd have to understand the biology and the mechanisms of homing pigeons. The flight engineering, they would look at the feathers and see how pigeons do what they do and talk about lift and the shape of wings and the shape of feathers. Talk about the living history, the historical technology. This was not just it's not just a nice to have in years past. This was the way you communicated when you traveled 200 years ago. If you want to think about the history of that time, no cell phones, right? You brought pigeons with you that you had trained to come back to your house, so you could send a message from when you got to the end point of your journey. The birds would fly home with your message and tell people that you got there. And so this is a communication technology and history brought to life when you explain it that way. And it's also about social emotional well-being. Again, there's pigeon hugging involved. And so in releasing it. So it's just a beautiful, really woven together idea. And she's got a lot of this type of like super deep thinking in everything she does. Another example from the book is an activity she called Exploring the Art of Arcimboldo, who was an artist from Vienna, Austria in the 1500s. And you may have seen some pictures. If you look on his name online, you'll see fruits and vegetables made into portraits that he would arrange, and then he would paint oil paintings of, and he served the emperor at that time. And so in studying art history with preschoolers and elementary schoolers, she uses this activity to connect to that rich art time period in Europe, and has kids work together to make portraits out of vegetables and fruits, and then they use them for soup. They cook them afterwards, so nothing's wasted. So we did this with our conference participants, and it was amazingly fun. And we made huge portraits on sheets outside with this cornucopia of vegetables and fruits. And you can see the creativity flowing here, and the teachers who were involved, and absolutely sure kids would love it. Also in that book, you'll find an activity about making a labyrinth to walk with kids, to relax and have mindfulness training, and just take a minute to have a quieter moment in your day. So the particular labyrinth directions tells you how to lay it out on the ground, on your asphalt, or on grass with movable objects, and step by step. The colors each correspond to a step of measurement to make that labyrinth. But the one that she wanted us to make at the conference had to do with shoes. She wanted people to walk the paths that others have literally walked, which was a beautiful idea. And then it involved collecting hundreds of shoes, which was a fun project. People brought in their own, and we went to other places too. Goodwill to find shoes that we brought and then brought back. So you can use all kinds of objects is the point. You don't have to use shoes, but movable objects can make a temporary labyrinth even on pavement. And so with that, I think here's the link to the page that has the books on the International School Grounds Alliance website, internationalschoolgrounds.org/ISGM. You can also find the same information on Green Schoolyards America's website on this page. I think Sue Humphrey's book is actually only on our site right now, but the rest are on both. And I'll leave it there. Thank you all. Happy to tell you more about that and talk about those things and see what you might want to try in your school or schools near you.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad I tuned in today. This is so much fun. I'm jealous that you're having so much fun. And I would really want to support schools in implementing some of these ideas and finding places on their campuses to have this kind of fun. I'm going to drop my email in the chat. I don't know who all we have here, but I would love more presentations around all these great ideas. They are truly inspiring.
Thanks. And there's Yelda Modubber, whose site at Gulistan School was the site of the release of those pigeons, and also the labyrinth and activities. And thank you, Anna, for that amazing offer. Fabulous. And Yelda, I know your teachers were trained in those activities by Sue Humphreys. Did you find that they tried them after that they had them introduced?
They did. They were so inspired by it. They had so much fun doing it. This was great for me because I'd forgotten about what's the name of that, Giuseppe, the Italian artist, and I totally forgot about that. And I think we can integrate that into one of our units this quarter, that I think the kids would have a lot of fun with, and it's just completely forgotten about it. So thank you for that.
Sure.
Sharon, oh, sorry, go ahead, Yalda.
No, it wasn't important. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, is there a way for folks to share things that they have done in the past, or, pictures or videos, or, maybe in the coming month of May, a way for them to share what they've done based on some of these activities?
Yeah, I think if schools and others want to put on their websites or on their Facebook posts, for example, what you're doing to celebrate International School Grounds Month, we will like those and share those and help you get the word out on Twitter and then Instagram and other places like that if you tag us. I think that it's the idea in having this presentation now in April is to give some time to think about, how you might go outside or help a school near you go outside and support resources. You don't need to have the whole idea with all the 200 plus activities here, the exception of Sue Humphrey's activities, which are a little more elaborate. The two main books with 235 ideas are all very simple things you can collect for almost no money, just that are in use every day, used differently outside, paved or unpaved schoolyards. There's ideas for all kinds of places. So you don't need to have an elaborate setup. But it can be, and I should also say that they are, because we wanted them to work anywhere in the world, they're not listed by grade level, they're listed by the age of the students. You'll find at the top of the activity, it'll say, and it also is meant to be general enough to let teachers adapt it for what they would like in their own classroom. And I see there's a question about releasing things. I agree that the balloons are fun but damaging to the environment where they land. And I don't know about butterflies. Here in the Berkeley area, there's an Anis swallowtail butterfly that a lot of teachers have taken to using, in that the butterflies lay eggs on wild fennel that grows around the city, and then teachers who find the eggs, or the baby caterpillars, or kids who find them, can bring them into the classroom and put the fennel fronds into a vase that then sits on the desk with a little basin under it, because they eat what they eat comes in one end, comes out the other end, and it just collects in the tray underneath it. But the little caterpillars eat the fennel on the desk in the classroom for like several weeks, and then they turn really big, and they make a chrysalis, and then you can release them after they come out of the chrysalis. So that it's not a mass release, but it's really a fun process to watch, and it's a lot different than reading about it in a book. And so even the release of 1 or 2 butterflies is exciting, and they come out on different days. I'd recommend, because I've always found that fun. My girls actually like it so much they got a butterfly tattoo this year. Big children. It was near and dear to their heart, but they've done it every year, and they wanted to remember that permanently. So I guess it's memorable. Yeah. A question: do educational facilities planning and design? Wonderful. Thank you for offering that and writing there, Anna, offering your help. Yep, and we would like those to be on our Facebook page and any of the social media. We're happy to share.
I wanted to chime in and say that I wasn't very familiar with the activity guides until I was working on our new table of contents that's on our website. And we had the idea of listing lots of the activities from the activity guide in the table of contents in the corresponding area of our National Outdoor Learning Library. And it was just so exciting and inspiring to, just like the talk that Sharon just gave, to discover the incredibly rich contents of those activity guides. And so I just wanted people to know that in addition to downloading them, there are various sections of them linked in our new table of contents. So if you're looking for something related to ecology, schoolyard ecology, or health, or any of the 9 chapters of the library, there are sections of the schoolyard activity guide linked there too.
Great point. Thank you so much, Nancy. And I think we're in the next version. We've updated the books about 5 times, I think, since 2013, and added more activities. And so the next version, when we do that, I think we will break it up into the chapters of the book, take the art activities from all the books and put them in one book, take the habitat activities from all the books and put them in one book, so that they'll be themed collections, remixed, but the same idea. And so that is what we hope to do by next year. That will make it easier also to share on the website along with themes. But the original idea was, we wanted to, having them all in one book was to show the immense realm of possibility that school grounds hold, and to have that whole set of ideas in one place in your hand when you download the book. And so, but I think it is time to split it out, because it's such a huge collection, and it's just easier to navigate when it's by topic, probably. So yeah, and I know we also have a little 2-minute video that I'm going to see if it works to share. It's cute. It was made by my colleague from the International School Grounds Alliance, who lives in the Czech Republic, and she asked other colleagues to send video footage of their kids at schools doing things in their country outdoors. I think it's just 2 minutes long. It's got some cute little music, and we'll see if it will share, if that's possible.
We'd love to hear about your colleague that you worked with who created that video too, Sharon.
Yeah, Jana works for an organization in Czech Republic, who's, I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce the name of the organization. I think it's Danks, but they did the translation of the book into the whole activity guide in the international edition into Czech, because they didn't have too many Czech resources for outdoor learning, and they wanted to make sure people had access to ideas from around the world. And so that's why we have a Czech edition and also a lovely little movie. But they solicited the video from I saw in there are definitely clips from Germany and Indonesia and the US and other places in that little video, just to give the flavor and the feeling of what it is to be a kid in environments that are nice and different locations, used well. It's both about the environment being nice and about using well, because you can have one without the other, and it's much better to nice to develop your schoolyard over time into what you would like it to be, to support the curriculum and play in social environments. And those things take time, but it involves both the permission to do things and the infrastructure to shift to allow more possibility.
I have a question for you, Sharon, that might interest the group. And you've done a lot of traveling all over the world. And I'm wondering, for those of us who haven't seen school grounds in other countries, I saw a playground in Japan that was really beautiful. It was like cherry blossoms in full bloom in the playground. But if, what can you share with those of us who haven't actually seen those spaces and maybe have limited funds, or, other folks that we're working with that have limited imagination?
I think it is hard to imagine things before you've seen them, I think. And so there are lots of pictures online, and in these books are filled with pictures of possibility. So I think that's one place to look. My book, which is called Asphalt to Ecosystems, also has 500 pictures from some of those trips that I have been on. But I'd say that like different parts of the world seem to specialize in different areas of developing the grounds. People around the world look to the US for our gardens. They don't have quite as big of an emphasis on edible gardens. I see nature play and climate preparations for like the ecological infrastructure side of things is very fully developed in Germany and in Scandinavia, where, like, for example, in Berlin, they unpaved 400 schoolyards 30 years ago to allow stormwater infiltration, and planted forests. And now they have the most climate resilient and school environments, I think, in the world, and also some of the best places for children. And their focus is not necessarily on teaching from those spaces, but to have the benefits for the ecological systems, the stormwater in particular, and great play and social environments. And I think they teach from them less often. But for me, seeing it all together, I think that you can justify changing the grounds on the basis of solely the learning potential, solely the health potential, or solely the recreation and social and health and well-being potential. And when you do them all, you get far and away the best end product. But it is valuable to do them for any of those reasons. So you'll find that kind of thing in Germany and Scandinavia. In Sweden, they're outside all year, even when it's cold in the winter. And so every preschool has a fire pit. And here in the US, like we find fire pits at all of our camps in the summer, and somehow we allow 13-year-old counselors to watch our small children near the fire in the summer, but we don't allow our schools with adult teachers to have them during the school year, which seems very strange to me in some ways when you look at it that way, and counterintuitive. And I think I didn't see that until I left the US and went looking for things. I think your own frame of reference shifts when things you take for granted are opposite of what you find in another place. And like in Japan, they have a very strong cultural context of more than 100 years of nature and school grounds, and a strong cultural connection to nature and seasons, and looking at local foods and things like this. And so you see kind of an intimate connection between nature and curriculum, especially for younger kids, less so with older ones, I think. But there's some just really beautiful design thinking and more risk in most school grounds. What we would see is risk, and that's different than hazard. Hazard, no one wants hazard. Hazard causes permanent injury. Risk is the basis of learning. Risk is the idea of when you try something new and you haven't done it before. There's a risk in trying that. It's essential, and we write it out of a lot of our standards, unfortunately, which doesn't help kids. And you see that more when you go out. So in Japan, like those climbing poles I had in one picture are a standard preschool play item, and they're like 12 feet tall, and the 3 and 4 year olds were zipping up to the top, and they had no safety surfacing under it, so the kids could accurately see on the ground. Like it was far, and they held on. And I don't, not that I recommend not having any safety surfacing, but I think that there's some value in having young children able to do vigorous, challenging activities and develop physically, have balance and coordination, and we miss that in our playground provision. So that's a couple of things.
I was on that trip to Berlin as well, and the biggest paradigm shift for me was their idea of children's right to privacy, children's right to play privately. And before that, a real guiding principle for all the designs that I did was always to maintain visibility everywhere in the space. And it was just really ground shaking to me to discover that there was a different way to do it, and children were fine and happy and had their little enclosed spaces to play where no one could see them, and that was considered really important and a right that children had. So yeah, traveling and seeing other ways that other people do things is really eye-opening.
And translating that idea to our context where people expect visibility. We have don't have the picture in this slideshow, but sometimes I show a picture of that German environment that's all leafy and green. And the schools here can have that. If you want to be able to see the feet walking behind the bushes, you prune the bottom foot or foot and a half of those bushes, and then when the children are sitting behind them, the leaves are still at their eye level, and they feel the sense of enclosure and comfort that you get when you're sitting in the bushes. But the adults can see the feet or the bottoms of the kids sitting behind the bushes, so you get both visibility for adults and privacy for kids. And so that kind of balance is not hard to find. It's just have to think about it, how you would do it. And the teachers at that school where I was seeing this like leafy, and Nancy was seeing leafy green environments, also reminded us that they didn't get there overnight, that those bushes, like bushes that grow up to be dense, start out as twigs, and you have time as they grow to adapt your supervision practices to meet the new environment. So yeah, I think we'll do more kind of talks about these types of things and share more details about what other places are doing in the coming, say, next 6 months as we get more into back to our Green Schoolyards work. And after this series, this particular community practice series is over in 2 more sessions. I envision that we will be having more in the fall on new themes, more ecologically based, and we'll invite some of those colleagues from other places to come and speak as well. It was wonderful having you all join us today, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks for coming.